Welcome to Planning with Purpose.
Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of Planning with Purpose with attorney Deb Morneau of Courteous Law PC out in Henniker, New Hampshire. I am your host, Mike Leon. Deb has been helping families all across southern and central New Hampshire make practical, thoughtful plans that spare their loved ones unnecessary stress. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about, speaking of unnecessary stress, probate. Deb's going to explain what it looks like in the state of New Hampshire and how simple planning choices can make the process much smoother for the people you leave behind. Deb, it's good to see you as always. For somebody out there who's listening to this, maybe they've never been through the process. What does the probate process look like in the state of New Hampshire from a family's point of view?
Thanks for having me, Mike. Great question. So probate in New Hampshire is it's a 12-month plus process. So it starts out with a bit of a wait. So it starts out with filing a petition for administration. And that petition, when it goes to the court, it takes anywhere from 30 to 90 days for it to be processed and for someone to be appointed as an executor. Once that happens, a few months goes by, and at that point, an inventory gets filed. So the executor has to take stock of all the assets that are in an estate. They file a document that essentially lists out, there's a bank account here, just in one of my other cases the other day, a wooden canoe over here, a card collection, whatever it is. And then there's a time for creditors to file claims. So that's 6 months from the date of appointment. And then after that, we get to the 1-year mark and there's an accounting that has to happen. And that is all the money in and out of the estate. And then it talks about, you have to follow the will if there is one. Who gets what, then assets are distributed after the bills are paid, and then the estate can be closed. But that's a lot of paper and it's a lot of time. So yeah, that's how it works.
Of course, there was a wooden canoe there mentioned. I love that. Deb, let me ask you, and you can tell me if this is right or wrong. New Hampshire's system is often considered more straightforward than in some other states. So what else makes part of the process tend to feel slow or confusing or even burdensome, like you mentioned, for families?
Right. It's the process. It just is slow. So the time deadlines in the process mean that even if your family has, paid all the bills, gathered up the assets, even asked permission to distribute all the assets, it just takes time. So you have to go through that 6 months and a day so that creditors have a chance to make a claim. And those can be just a final medical bill. In another case of mine, a family member didn't know that there was a credit card out there. So the credit card company said, hey, by the way, you got to pay me. And it wasn't huge, but nobody knew it was out there. So that popped up. It just takes a while. The forms, the inventory form is not horrible to fill out. The accounting, even when I do the accounting and my client gets me all the paperwork, it still is, it's a few 2-3+ hours of lawyer time just to fill that out and then get it filed with the court. And then if you don't do something exactly right, the court will return it to you and tell you to do it again. So it just can be laborious. The attorney, I can help out with those things, but, generally speaking, I'm not going to the person who's passed away to their house, to go through all their stuff and find their bills. That kind of thing can be overwhelming. But if we talk before somebody passes away, I can help people streamline that process and make it a little bit less stressful.
Well, let's piggyback on that and talk about the planning choices part of this. What kind of planning choices should people be making that help keep assets out of probate?
That is a great question. So there are several things people can do. The global choice is to have a revocable trust and to get your assets put into the name of your trust. If somebody is not really excited about going that direction with their plan, the other options are to put other people's names on bank accounts, to have assets titled in 2 names. A simple one is if you have a car and you have a spouse, have both names on a car. The harder part is when one spouse dies or someone is alone towards the end of life, and then there's no other names on accounts, there's nothing else, then those assets have to go through probate. And there are a lot of things that people should consider before, I have a lot of clients. Can't we just put my kid's name on my house? Well, there are gift tax issues with this. There are Medicaid look back issues. There are a number of complicating factors that I tell folks, I understand that sounds great. And maybe just the cost of a quick claim deed, just to you and the kids sounds great, but it counts as an asset. So if your kids, then you have grandchildren who are going to go to college, now, your child whose kid is going to college now has a countable asset for, that FAFSA form. And, everybody's trying to fill that form out and make sure you get all the right college aid. So there are decisions that can have downstream ramifications that sometimes folks don't think about. And so the cleanest way to go is to create a revocable trust, put all your assets into that trust, and then from there, no matter what, we avoid probate. So that's my recommendation.
Deb, in a previous episode, we talked about wills. I
Yes.
think a lot of people probably assume that a will avoids probate. What should listeners understand about what a will actually does and what it doesn't do in terms of the court's involvement?
Sure. So no matter what, a will's going through probate. I think if you take anything away from this episode is that if you have a will, you're going through probate. The benefit of the will is that the people that you want to inherit your assets will inherit your assets. Because if you don't have a will, then the statute of intestacy is going to determine who gets what. And that means we're going to look if you have surviving parents or a surviving spouse or adult children, which is tricky if you're in a second marriage and maybe both spouses have adult children. Then things can get a little bit sticky if there's no will at all. If you have a will, at least people know what you want, but no matter what, you're going to go through probate unless you have assets titled in other names or if you have fully just a revocable trust.
Deb, in a previous episode, I asked you to give some kind of examples. Can you kind of give an example here where you've seen a family's experience was a lot noticeably easier because their plan kept a bunch of things out of probate?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently I had a client who has never been married and has no children. And so he came to me because he was not well. We knew he was inevitably going to pass away soon. He had cancer. And so he came and he said, you know what? I want these particular friends of mine to be able to inherit. So we did a revocable trust. It was great. He listed out everybody that he wanted to have for assets, and he did some charitable giving, which was wonderful. So we laid all of that out, and he had a friend who was going to be his trustee, or is now his trustee, and that person was able to wrangle up all the assets because they were already in the trust. We already had laid out a nice notebook with all account documents in there. Everything was pulled together. And so the friend was able to take the final documents that we had done and was able to work with the bank, got the bills paid, and it was much easier than it could have been. And I know that his wishes were fulfilled because of the way that we did his trust. It was really great.
Well, that's great to hear. And let's go on to the flip side of this, which is I'm sure there's oversights done by folks. It could be
Yeah,
missing signatures,
for
outdated
sure.
beneficiaries. So what are some that you've seen over your time that tend to pull assets into probate when the person probably thought, I got everything covered?
Hmm. That happens a lot. So the one silly asset that seems to be left out all the time are the cars. And for whatever reason, if you have a car that's paid off, it's easy to put it in your trust, no problem. However, a lot of times folks just forget to do it. The next time the registration comes up, they go to town hall, they just pay it and they move on, and they forget that they really should transfer the title into their trust. So right now, I am doing a probate for a $1,000 car that doesn't even run. But my client says, oh, this is mom's car, and I know I can get it running with just a little bit of work, but the registration's out, the inspection's out, and now what do I do? And I said, oh, we have to go through probate for the $1,000 car. So that happens a lot. So those are easy ones to fix.
Right. Well, Deb, as we put a final bow on today's episode, someone's listening to this. They're in New Hampshire right now. They want to start simplifying things for their family. What's something that you would advise them to do this month to start moving things in the right direction?
Um, Absolutely. So I say that there's a number of things that you can do. If you want to start simplifying, number one, check your beneficiary designations on life insurance, retirement plans, all those things. Make sure they're in order so that you have a first line of beneficiaries. And then if that person passes, you have a secondary set of beneficiaries. The other one is to pull together just one statement from each of your accounts and put it in a file folder, a notebook, put it somewhere so somebody can find it. And then let somebody know where your passwords are to all of that online, all the online transactions that you have, whether it be your utility bills, whether it be your bank account, or whatever it is. Make sure somebody can find those passwords. FYI, if you have an iPhone and you try to guess somebody's password, you only get so many guesses and then you're really done and you're not breaking into that iPhone. I promise you, you're not. And lots of people do this. I put everything in my safe, which is great until nobody knows the combination to your safe. Let somebody know the combination to your safe and don't just write it down and leave it only in your house, outside of your house. Because my job, I tell everybody, is to be a little bit morbid because things happen. And so if something was to happen to your house, a flood, a fire, whatever it might be, we want your wishes and your documents to be able to be found and to understand what's in them. So if we put them somewhere where nobody can get them, then your wishes aren't known. So I guess those would be my takeaways from making it easier.
Yeah, it's great advice. Deb, thank you as always for the time and insights on this. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike, for having me, and I'll see you next time.
And that's it for today's episode of Planning with Purpose with Deb Morneau. If you need help reviewing your documents or building a plan that helps keep things as simple as possible for the people you love, do me a favor right now. Connect with Deb and the team over at courteouslaw.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.